Good evening, this is Dr. Terry Simmons of the SimmonsReview.com. And it occurred to me that while we do these informational podcasts, that maybe some of our viewers don't have a lot of background as far as the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the history of the Soviet Union. And we're going to take this clinic minute to, I'll do a quick timeline, by far not comprehensive, but enough to maybe make the interested viewer chew on it a little bit and maybe even do a little outside reading. I specialize in Russian-American relations, so I have some background, and I'm published in the area. So I would say to you that we have had a push-pull, détente, confrontation type of relationship with both Soviets, Russians, then Soviets, and now Russians again for quite some time. There was a period called the Cold War from 1947 through 1991. Those dates are flexible within a couple of years, but basically what we did was to coexist with the Russians. We had nuclear weapons, they had nuclear weapons. We were the two most dangerous countries on the face of the earth. The other actors were just emerging into their own right, but the big confrontation was between us. George Kennan was assigned by the president, President Truman, to go to Moscow and say, are they going to be our enemies or aren't they? And he came back and said, yes, I'm afraid long term they are going to be our adversaries. And of course they got the nuclear weapon and the hydrogen weapons and so on. So as the Cold War progressed and went through its various stages, we went through the 62 Cuban crisis, the 61 Berlin crisis first, then Cuba. And then we went through Brezhnev's period and finally ended up with Gorbachev. And Gorbachev wanted to change things and reform the system, but it got out of hand for him. He lost control, and it evolved to, he had to hand off power to Boris Yeltsin, who was the first Russian true blue Democrat. And Yeltsin had some issues. He had health problems. He also had alcoholism as a problem. But he had the hearts of the Russian people. They believed in him. He tried democracy, but instead of a liberal democracy, he ended up with an illiberal democracy, which exists today. Fast forward to Vladimir Putin. Putin took over from Yeltsin when he could not sustain that system and reverted back to the strongman image of KGB intelligence rule. Vladimir Putin, being a former KGB agent, brought on a Siloviki cadre to run the government. 70% of the government is Siloviki, which means they are former KGB and GRU officers. And today there is a non-ideological government in the Russian Federation, which basically is oriented to a very hard-nosed, practical confederation, a capitalist confederation. They don't really talk too much about beliefs. They make money. They make lots of it. And up until a few years ago, they were riding on a river of oil and natural gas, supplying Western Europe, gave them tremendous political leverage, and really enriched the country. And he brought the country back from on the brink of being a failed state. Today, we're dealing with Putin on several different levels, and he has asserted himself, particularly through the seizure of Georgia in 2008, and then Crimea last year, 2014. And now he's still in Ukraine, possibly, if not taking over the entire country, then suborning the leadership. So that's where we are today. And we will offer these clinic minutes to offer some understanding, some background when necessary, so that our viewers can have an enriched experience watching the SimmonsReview.com. I want to thank you for tuning in.